Start off. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for presenting today at committee, and I'll just jump right in. Mr. Housefather provided the minister's office with information in July about Mr. Marouf's vile anti-Semitism, and a statement was made after coming to light only on August 22nd. So that's at least 22 days if Mr. Housefather told the minister's office on July 31st. So I just want to know, what day were you made aware of Mr. Marouf's vile anti-Semitic hate spewed everywhere that I think a simple Google search could have turned up?
The comments, I want to make this absolutely clear. The comments made by this individual are absolutely appalling. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. They are reprehensible and vile, and we condemn the anti-Semitism, racism, and hatred that he has spread in the strongest possible terms. I thank MP Housefather for bringing this individual to our attention. When this issue was raised, we immediately asked the Department of Canadian Heritage to confirm the organization's project funding details and to inform us on the procedural next steps. After the review by the legal department, we followed the process in place to cut funding to the organization, as well as terminating the project.
Thank you, Minister. I asked what day you were made aware in July. So presuming that it took at least 22 days for you to make a public statement, I just want to know why it took so long.
I want to thank the honourable member for the question. I want to assure her and this committee that when this was first brought to our attention, we had obviously much less information than we do today, of course. So right away, I asked my office and my team to look into the situation and provide me with options to address this quickly. Do I wish that we've been able to move the process along more quickly? Absolutely. But it was also important that we got this right to ensure accountability for this organization and this individual, and for any other individual or group that may seek to apply for government funding. And so that's why we're moving forward on the introduction of robust new vetting measures, enhanced measures, one of which will be to ensure that the Government of Canada can act more quickly and more immediately as appropriate.
Minister, with all due respect, if you were told by a member of your own team in July and it took until August 22nd to come up with a statement on something so serious, I would certainly ask questions about the process. But I want to know, Minister, if the minister initially tried to claim shock at the entire affair, calling the issue one of CMAC, which we know is an organization of Mr. Marouf and his wife and no one else, despite the fact that the minister personally praised Mr. Marouf in a press release on April 14th, saying that our government is proud to contribute to this initiative. So I have a few questions. Did no one Google Mr. Marouf, his wife, the organization? And I want to know from the minister what he was ostensibly proud of.
First of all, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. Because the funding, with respect to the news release, because the funding was already approved in the summer of 2021, before I became the minister responsible for the file, we trusted at that time that adequate vetting had been completed. However, as we have said, this individual fell through the cracks. The vetting process failed in this case, and this is completely unacceptable. That is why I am happy to inform the committee that we're putting in place new, enhanced, robust measures to ensure that this type of thing never, ever happens again. And I'm happy to go through the details of the new enhanced vetting process.
Madam Chair, I think Canadians want to know who approved the release and whether the minister, or whether this is an omission or it's incompetence. Did nobody Google anybody in the release? And why would the government say that it is proud of the work that was being done by the vile anti-Semitic hatred that has been spewed all over the internet? And a simple Google search would have turned that up by the minister's office, anybody in the minister's organization, anybody in the Department of Heritage, and anybody in the Canadian government at all.
I agree with the honourable member. This is why your question is very important. I completely agree with you that in this particular case, the process used to select this organization failed. And that is clearly unacceptable. That is why we did the right thing by launching a review of how this organization was vetted and approved for funding. One of the things that the review showed is that that the evaluation process did not initially detect the hateful comments made by this individual and this organization. So we're taking swift action to make sure this never happens again.
Minister, I realize that
Madam Chair,
you're looking at.
If I can just finish the answer, I'm sure the honourable member will appreciate what we're putting in place to make sure this never happens again.
So, Minister, I'd just like to know, who did you trust in the department? Are you saying that you can't trust your department going forward? And then my second question, if you'll be so kind to answer it, Mr. Marouf claims CMAC, which is an actual fact, Mr. Marouf and his wife and no one else, so not an organization, just somebody and his wife, was approached by Heritage and was begged to develop an anti-racism proposal. I want to know if that's true. I want to know if you've asked your department, and I want to know if you can trust the answer from the Canadian Department of Heritage.
The minister has 17 seconds to answer.
Madam Chair, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. Because I only have a few seconds left, I'll say to the honourable member once again, the vetting process in this place failed. Our responsibility is to ensure that this never happens again by introducing new and enhanced and robust measures to make sure this never happens again. And that's exactly what we're doing. And until then, no single dollar will go out. All funding has been paused to make sure this never happens again.
Minister, thanks for joining us. Just to clarify, on what date did Mr. Housefather inform you of these concerns about Mr. Marouf?
I thank MP Housefather for bringing this individual to our attention. The comments made by this individual are
Minister, with respect, what was the date?
When this issue was first raised, we immediately asked the department to look into it and confirm the details.
And Minister, with respect, on what date?
Madam Chair, I'm trying to answer the question.
It's a simple question, just a date.
It was on July the 19th or 20th, around
so
there.
July 19th or 20th. So even longer than was originally a full month before your department took any action. I want to go back. You said this.
Well, I wouldn't
Minister,
say
Minister,
that the department didn't take any action. I think that's an unfair characterization, but I'll let you finish your question. And
with respect, I do have the floor, Minister. You'd mentioned that this fell through the cracks, and with respect, this fell through a canyon. This isn't something that wasn't glaring with flashing lights that couldn't have been found by Google. So I want to ask you, who specifically in your department has been held accountable for this failure?
I want to assure the honourable member, despite the premise of his question, there was already work underway to get the details of the funding for this organization and to establish the process to terminate both the contract and the project, and that was done. In addition to that, the vetting process that was in place at the time that this project was approved clearly did not work. Obviously, that is clear to us, and our job is to ensure that not only do we terminate this contract and demand that the money be repaid, which is what we've done, but to ensure that this never happens again by putting in place measures, robust, enhanced measures, and better training and vetting to ensure this never happens again. That's why I'm here, to talk about those measures and to
thank you, Minister. And with respect, it sounds like no one's really been held accountable within your department. I want to move on. According to a media report in the Arabic language website, anashir.com, it says that according to Mr. Marouf, CMAC was actually invited to submit an application. They were encouraged by Heritage Canada. It went so far as to say Heritage Canada dumped money on them. I'd like to know who within your department contacted Mr. Marouf and CMAC to so strongly encourage them to seek out this funding.
At the time that this project was approved, this was in 2021. I was not the minister on the file.
Minister, with respect, you're the minister responsible, so I'm asking you, who within the department reached out to CMAC and Mr. Marouf and encouraged them to apply for this funding? Who was it?
The process used to select this organization was clearly unacceptable. And I can tell you, sir, that this vetting process failed.
Okay, Minister,
job
again,
is to-
I'm asking you a very simple question. Who
And I'm
within
trying
the
to
department, and no, you're not, sir. I'm asking you, who within the department sought out Mr. Marouf and CMAC and encouraged them to apply for this funding? Who was it?
I will have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure what you're referring to. You're referring to obviously a media article that you read somewhere, but I'm happy to get back to you on that. It's not something that I've come across.
Thank you, Minister. And Madam Chair, I would like that noted that the Minister will be returning to us with the individual within the Department of Canadian Heritage who sought out CMAC to encourage them to apply for funding. Minister, as you're aware, there's a media report that potentially CRTC is still paying Mr. Marouf funding. Are you aware whether or not CRTC is still providing funding to CMAC and or Mr. Marouf?
Well, my response to your question, which is an important question, is that we are surprised and disappointed by CRTC's decision. Funds should never go to an organization that demonstrates racism and anti-Semitism and xenophobia. And Canadians really expect that this principle applies to all public and private institutions. So that is my response to your question.
Thank you, Mr. Nader. That's it.
Minister, I do appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. I do make note of a few comments that were made during our time here with regard to questions that were asked by members of my party, but also other members at the table. Namely this, it wasn't until August 21st that we saw any sort of comment made by you with regard to the allegations that, I should say with regard to the conduct of Mr. Marouf. And so August 21st, that was when we first saw you come out on this. And even then, your statement was quite pat. I quote, you said that you were working to rectify this matter. So there was not even a statement of strong condemnation or making it clear as to where you stood as an individual, as a minister, or where your government stood. Further to that, there was no statement made by Minister Rodriguez, who oversees the Heritage Department. There was no statement made by the Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau himself. There was no statement made by any other member, with the exception of Mr. Anthony Housefather, who brought this to your attention long before. In fact, you just told this committee that this issue was brought to your attention on July 19th or 20th. So July 19th or 20th is when you first became aware of this issue. You did not make a statement until August 21st. Again, that statement had nothing to do with taking accountability or responsibility for this matter, but rather just simply saying that you would basically look into it. And then, of course, things continue to escalate from there. Now, in front of this committee, you continue to refuse to take responsibility or to be held accountable. Instead, you're wanting to put the problem onto the vetting system. It's the system's problem. And so you're saying that the system will somehow be fixed. Now, you haven't exactly walked us through what that's going to look like, nor do we really have time for that today, but I would welcome you to table that for the committee to take a look at. But nevertheless, you are skirting the issue once again and saying that it is the system's fault. It is not the system's fault. It failed, yes. But today, you as the minister are before this committee because it was your responsibility to act when you became aware of what was going on. And your first point of action should have been to condemn the racist and anti-Semitic actions of Mr. Marouf.
I did that.
And you failed to act for a month. For 1 month, you sat silent. And as the quote goes, all that evil needs to triumph is for men, good men, we assume that's you, to do nothing. Nothing. And that is exactly what you did. You did nothing for 1 month. You stood on the sidelines and you blamed it on a system when you as an individual with a conscience, with a heart, hopefully with an ounce of integrity, had an opportunity to do something.
Be careful.
And you did nothing. I'm not done.
But
And
I
so
would
here
advise
we
you
are.
to be careful with your language. Thank you.
And so here we are before this committee. Our questions continue to be skirted and the blame continues to be put on the system. Now, the one thing that you did offer us today is that you do disagree with the funding that was given. You do believe that it should be pulled back and your department has taken that responsibility. But you further said that the CRTC needs to do the same because there's about $500,000 that has gone in that direction. In order for that to take place, it would be then important for Mr. Rodriguez himself to come to this committee and to be able to testify. And so
I'm sorry, you are muted, Ms. Thomas.
thank you. I'm not sure at what point I got muted, Madam Chair.
You said you would like Mr. Rodriguez to testify, so you were only muted for about a second or two. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And so with that, because it's been brought to our attention that the CRTC gave about $500,000 of funding to Mr. Marouf and his wife, AKA the organization, and it would be then pertinent for Mr. Rodriguez to come and appear before this committee, I would like to move a motion to that effect, and I'm happy to read that into the record at this point.
You have 2 seconds, Ms. Thomas. I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, once I move a motion, I am no longer constrained by time.
But you have
I
not
will read my
started
motion into
the motion.
I asked for your
Alright.
permission to read it into the record.
Go ahead.
Thank you. In light of the shocking testimony and the discovery that CMAC received over $500,000 from the CRTC dating back to 2016, I move that the Minister of Canadian Heritage be invited to appear before the committee at the earliest date possible regarding the federal funding provided to the Community Media Advocacy Centre, known as CMAC, by the Department of Canadian Heritage and the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, in brackets CRTC. Madam Chair, when it's appropriate, I wish to speak to my motion.
Minister, earlier, after Ms. Lanceman's question, when she asked you why you took so long to react after having been alerted by Mr. Housefather regarding Mr. Marouf's tweets, you said information was missing. So what information, additional information, did you need in order to act? Your reaction to these unacceptable comments only happened on August 22nd. So what information was missing for you? Was it not scandalous enough for you yet before that, Minister?
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you very much for your question.
I want to assure the honorable member that I find, and I've stated this before and I'll state it again, I find the comments made by this individual as well as this organization to be vile, reprehensible, hateful, and unacceptable. The anti-Semitism, racism, and hate that has been expressed.
Monsieur le ministre, c'est pas ça ma question.
Minister, that is not my question. What I want to know is what was missing. What was missing? Please go ahead because I don't have very much time. I have other questions.
Thank you. So the fact of the matter is, as soon as we were made aware of this individual and his hateful remarks, we went to the, I asked my team to look into it, give me options, and also deal with the Department of Canadian Heritage to find out funding details about this organization and making sure that we follow the process that was in place. Upon looking at the funding details, we consulted the legal department and followed the process that was in place at that time to suspend funding. And I can update the member now that we've not only terminated funding, but we've demanded that this organization pay back the money that.
Oui, ça c'est tout à fait normal.
Yes, and that is expected, and we understand that, and we appreciate it. But what I do find, Minister, is that even though in mid-July, Mr. Housefather informed you of the situation, you reacted after social media was informed about it. So we found out about this through Twitter, and afterwards your department reacted. I find it's ironic, and perhaps it leads us to believe that social media is what made you react. You also said that you had asked, you had made sure that this organization was held to account. And what did this organization, CMAC, respond to you when you asked them to hold themselves accountable?
When this issue was raised, I want to assure the honorable member again that we immediately asked the Department of Canadian Heritage to confirm the organization's project funding details and to inform us on the procedural next steps. After the review by the legal department, we followed the process in place to cut funding to the organization, as well as terminating the project. We know this should not have happened, and that's why I'm here today to discuss with you the changes that we're making sure.
Monsieur le ministre.
Minister. Wait one moment, Minister. You yourself said that you had asked for CMAC to explain. So we expect that they would have responded to you. Did the organization respond? And if so, what did they say to justify these unacceptable remarks?
I will turn to Deputy Minister, Assistant Deputy Minister Kana for this answer.
C'est bon, on va pouvoir lui parler dans la deuxième.
It's okay. We'll be able to speak with her in the second hour. I have other questions for you, Minister. You said that you put measures in place internally and training that was available to fight racism and to ensure that there was no racism and anti-Semitism within the organizations that you allocate public funds to. Regarding the level of importance of anti-Semitic remarks, where do you prioritize or class these remarks? Because it took time for you to say that there had also been hateful comments towards Francophones. So does that type of hate also get covered in the training that you put in place for your teams?
Comme je l'ai déjà dit,
as I have already said a number of times, the hateful comments by this individual against Francophone Canadians are absolutely vile. We condemn them in the strongest possible terms. Minister, I want for you to answer the question. You are repeating the same remarks, Minister.
Madam Chair, if I can finish the answer.
Is there... No, because you're not answering my question. What I want to know, Minister, is in the anti-Semitism and anti-racism training, there is a component on hatred against Francophones. We have seen it multiplying. We see it on social media against Francophones, and nowhere in the program do we see any mention of anti-Francophone hatred. Is that included in the training, yes or no?
I have stated very clearly that the hateful comments towards Francophone community members by this individual, by this organization, are reprehensible. I said this from the very beginning, and I will repeat that. Absolutely. We will make sure that the enhanced training, anti-Semitism, anti-racism, and anti-discrimination training and anti-hateful training for all program officers includes sensitivity towards and fighting against hatred towards Francophone community members. That is a commitment that I can make to you.
Thank you, Minister, for being here today. I was a little concerned about your initial comments where you talked about anti-Semitism remains a reality. I believe you're minimizing this. The police-reported hate crime latest statistics actually shows a significant rise in anti-Semitism, hate-motivated crimes. So what we're dealing with is not something that remains a reality. What we're dealing with is something that is becoming a greater and greater threat to our society. Anti-Semitism and anti-Semitism hate crimes are growing in this country. And so in that context, I wanted to come back to the comments you made initially, that you had believed that there had been an adequate vetting had taken place when you became the minister. Did that adequate vetting take into consideration social media accounts that date back to 2017 that clearly show a pattern of anti-Semitic slogans and comments on social media by Mr. Marouf?
Mr. Julian, I would have to start my response by responding to your initial comments. I in no way meant to suggest that anti-Semitism should not be taken seriously. Quite the contrary. I have, in many years of my adult life, I've spent time fighting anti-Semitism, fighting Islamophobia, fighting racism on the ground, working with community members from various communities. So I take this extremely seriously, and I would encourage you to revisit my remarks on this matter in a number of occasions. So I disagree with you with respect, sir. On the issue of the previous processes that existed before I became minister, this funding was approved in the summer of 2021 before I became the minister responsible for this file, and we trusted at that time that the adequate vetting had been completed. And as we have said, this individual fell through the cracks, and that is why I'm here today to assure members that we're putting in place measures, significant measures, to ensure this never happens again.
Okay, thank you. I want to come to those significant measures because you haven't talked about a social media screen at all. That was obviously clearly something that was a huge and significant omission from the process that was put into place. So in terms of the social media screens, what are the social media screens that are put into place as part of your new revised policy? And going beyond anti-Semitism, which, as I've mentioned, is growing, Islamophobia is growing, racism is growing. We've heard this week about a toxic incel group, a misogynistic group that was on Leader of the Official Opposition's YouTube feed, the Men Going Their Own Way, MGTOW. Does your social media screen that you're putting into place include all of those hateful signs, hashtags, to ensure that this kind of thing never happens again, whether we're talking about anti-Semitism or all other forms of hate?
So, Madam Chair, I'm happy to reiterate again the vetting process, the comprehensive vetting process, and the pieces that are in it that I've already stated. But in terms of the detailed question with respect to social media that the member is asking, I'll turn to Assistant Deputy Minister Khanna to provide additional.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. I will ask this question then later on when you get another opportunity to put that into place. So coming back then to the timeline, mid-July, you become aware of these comments because of Mr. Housefather's intervention. It takes over a month, as a number of other of my colleagues have indicated. Is the delay in that due to this fact that this particular program is double-headed? You have to go to Canadian Heritage, another minister, Minister Rodriguez, to get the information that is important for you to make the decision about cancelling the contract. Is the very structure of how we have two ministers competing for one program, is that part of the reason why there was such a delay?
Absolutely not. I am the minister on the file, and I made a point as soon as the issue was raised. I immediately asked my team to look into it, provide me with options. But we also asked the Department of Canadian Heritage to confirm the project funding details, and to inform us on the procedural next steps. After the review by the legal department, we followed the process in place to cut funding to the organization, as well as terminating the project. We know this should not have happened, but that's why I'm here today to talk about how we have enhanced the process significantly to make sure this never happens again.
30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, there's obviously a problem. What we have is two ministers that are compiling and working in one file. When you have one minister having to get information from another department, we have a delay in this case that was over a month of very virulent, toxic, anti-Semitic comments, basically continuing to be funded by the federal government over that period. And I don't have reassurance from the minister right now that the kind of social media screen that is so important, whether we're talking about anti-Semitism or misogyny, is clearly put into place to stop this from happening again. That is a matter of some concern.
I can assure the